You want the...
Hello, conductor. Emily.
Good morning.
Is this actually getting them? Can you tell?
The initial teaching experiences of pre-service music educators. My name is Christina Santoro. I'm Devon LePore. And I'm Dana Arbaugh. A brief overview of our presentation today. We will be talking about the background of student teaching, the purpose of our study, how we collected our data, our findings, both group and individual, and finally, some implications for university music teacher preparation programs.
So just a little bit of the background on the student teaching experience at universities across America. The capstone experience traditionally takes place during the senior year, and it is considered a full-time job in the public schools. This capstone experience can last anywhere between 8 to 16 weeks, and there really is a great deal of variance in terms of time and effectiveness of this capstone experience. And the research on the student teaching experience, on the effectiveness of it, is inconclusive. There are studies that say that the capstone student teaching experience is highly effective part of the teacher music preparation program. There is also evidence to support that it has little effect on pre-service teachers entering the profession. And in a study done in 2002 by Conway, student teaching was found to be either the most influential or the least influential aspect of teacher preparation. So the research is very inconclusive on the effectiveness. And because of this, the purpose of our study was just to take a little bit of a closer look at the lived experience of 3 undergraduate music education majors during our initial 4 months of our student teaching experience.
So the setting of our undergraduate music program takes place at a liberal arts college of about 6,000 students, and within that our music school is about 500 students. And these are some reasons why our student teaching experience is unique. The first is that our student teaching experience begins in our junior year, where we teach once a week, and then it follows by that we teach during our senior year with the normal student teaching that is considered full-time. And so we go once a week, teach weekly lessons with school children ages 3 through 8, and we teach them in private and small group lesson settings. So the student teachers either travel to the schools where we teach at, or the students are brought to campus and are taught in our school facilities. We have one cooperating teacher and one college supervisor throughout the whole year, so we get consistent and formal and informal feedback, and we also submit weekly lesson plans that include our self-assessment of our previous lessons. And the student teaching experience is also unique because it is embedded in classes on campus, such as teaching instrumental music and wind instrument typing.
So a description of how we did our study. It was a multiple case self-study, meaning we looked back at all of our self-reflections from the weekly assignments and collected our data sources, which were themes from our weekly self-assessments, things that we found coming up each and every week during our self-reflections. We had written cooperating teacher and supervisor feedback sheets, so we got 2 points of view on every lesson. And we also had written self-analysis of our videotaped teaching episodes. And finally, some of the academic coursework that was done in our wind instrument pedagogy class. We also did qualitative analysis. We took those data sources that we found common in ourselves and compared them to each other's data sources. And we extracted our salient themes, so things that showed up in all 3 of us. We sorted those out, and we triangulated them for validity, which meant comparing the amount of times that it was showing up in each of our own self-reflections.
Great, so now we're going to take a little bit of time and share some of our individual findings and challenges. So I'm Dana. I'm a music education major at French Horn, and I teach through the homeschool program. So my students would travel to campus once a week, and I would teach them individual lessons, small group lessons, and eventually in the spring this would culminate in a large ensemble experience or homeschool band. And my job also involved parent communication. Again, because I was a homeschool teacher and didn't have another music teacher like they would in the public school system, it was my job to communicate things such as logistics of the program and also just to update the parents on how their students were doing with their issues. By far, my biggest issue was with the curriculum of the program or the lack thereof. Because I taught homeschool students, there was no other band director guiding the way they taught and learned. We didn't decide on a method book. So I was left with our method book, Essential Elements 2000, and that was to decide how to teach a student's material and learn. So every week, without fail, not only would I reflect on the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing in my lessons, I would reflect on the fact that I wasn't really sure in what order I was supposed to be teaching these musical concepts to my students, and I would try to come up with these crazy long-term plans every week and make a curriculum, and it cost me so much money. Also, I am my students' only classroom music setting, and in addition to that, for many of my students, this was their first music experience ever. So because of that, when there would be issues with classroom management, so the student would be talking a lot during lesson and distracting the other student in the lesson, or even if they just stopped, practicing and working and become unprepared, I was so unsure of how I should handle those situations because I didn't want to be too strict and scar them with their classroom music experience and have them think that this is what music is like. And I just wanted them to have the best most possible, positive experience possible. And also, I didn't want to have no boundaries because everyone knows how we feel about our teachers who don't have any boundaries. So it's really tough to find that balance for me. And finally, am I doing my job? I was my students' only classroom music teacher. So my students, unlike my peers in the public schools, I didn't have a band director that I was sending my students back to learn about band in the classroom in addition to our lessons together. So I was it. So every week I looked at myself in the mirror, and if I didn't do a good job, I felt this terrible, horrible guilt that I wasn't giving my students their music education because I was it. They were only getting it from me. So I really felt like I had to bring my A game and be a master teacher all the way, and I never felt like that.
I'm Devon, and I'm a music education and performance major at NCUR. My student teaching experience takes place in a public elementary school, and I teach 4th and 5th grade lessons. Each group of lessons has 3 students, and the 4th graders use a starting 30 students. One challenge I had was teacher personality. I found that I would get so caught up in worrying about my teaching ability and wondering whether or not I was doing the right thing that I became hesitant in my teaching. And so too, in my teacher personality, I worried about things such as how my being perceived by others, who do my students like me, does my supervisor think I'm doing a good job? So that was all things going through my head while I was teaching. Another problem that I found what to do next. I would finish an activity, and then I'd have to stop and think about what I wanted to do next, and then I realized it would be easier to think about like what to do next during the current activity to plan ahead so that affected my lesson flow and pacing. And then varying teaching methods. So when I started with my teaching experience, it's something I tried to balance. I would get stuck because I didn't know what to try next. I didn't have a bunch of different ideas, but as time went on, I started a bag of tricks, so to speak, and now it's something I tried to work. I have a few other ideas of things that I can like that.
And I'm Christina, and I'm a music education major and I teach in a public elementary school, and I have 4th grade beginning lessons. I have 2 groups of 2 students and 1 group of 3 students. Some of the individual issues that I found were sort of the opposite of what Dana had. I had trouble following my curriculum that my school had set forth. I was given a method book, and I knew where my kids had to end up, but I didn't really like the method book I was given, and it didn't present the topics in the order that I would have if I had, free reign over teaching my kids. So I had to kind of find a way to work in the way that I would teach a student into this method book. Still kind of a difficulty, but it's something I was constantly worrying about. And secondly, I found that my students had these expectations of themselves. Like in the first lesson, if they couldn't all play Hot Cross Buns, it seemed like the end of the world for my students. And I was trying to figure out where they got these ideas from. Like, were they listening to professionals play Hot Cross Buns? And they were really upset. Like, I didn't know what was going on in their heads. So I really had to assure them, like, you'll get better. You just need to practice. And after giving them, practicing tips, I was seeing better work for my students. But initially, it was just very disconcerting that my kids had such low self-esteem about their music. So I had to work on that. And now we're going to go into some findings, some common themes that we found in all of our self-reflections.
So the first common theme that we all had was difficulty with pedagogy, specifically explaining abstract musical concepts, and especially in those first few weeks of teaching, we had a hard time always concisely conveying how to internalize a steady pulse, or maybe playing with a musical line. We weren't always the most clear with our explanations right away. And again, I got better with time. Expectations of our students. I know for a fact that all 3 of us walked into our first lesson and pinpointed our one student who's going to go on and be a music major. And we all had high hopes for these students who had the best buzz right away, and like, you're a natural, you're gonna play in the New York Phil, and 3 weeks later when they stopped practicing, they thought it was boring. First, there was a disconnect between our expectations for our students and what was really happening. And also we turned to ourselves. We were wondering, man, how are we not motivating the students? What are we doing wrong as young teachers? And next, which kind of ties into that, expectations of ourselves as a teacher. None of us had problems getting up in front of the classroom every day, looking the part, being professional.